viralnater presents His Condition Was Kept a Secret Until Now. There are a lot of famous cooks out there, and some of them are famous for more than just their cooking. Before his sad death in 2018, Anthony Bourdain was one of them. People liked how good he was at cooking, but his trip films and personal drama also caused a lot of buzz. A lot of things may be lost or not known about the chef since he died, but it's important to remember these things about Anthony Bourdain's life. All of them are what's left of the man, so it's important to treasure them. Dishwasher after dropping college. Getting a degree and going to college is one of the best things that some people have ever done, but not Anthony Bourdain. An interview with his brother gave to CQ said that while the cook was at Vassar, a liberal arts college, he didn't care much for his schooling. He didn't try to see things through to the end because of this. Anthony chose not to get a degree, so he quit school and got a job as a cook in a restaurant in Provincetown. He made the right choice because it helped him start his cooking job and figure out what he wanted to do with his life. But it would be a while before it worked out. Japan impact on life. An interesting fact is that many cooks also like to travel. People all over the world eat a lot of different kinds of food, so they're going to get ideas from what they see. This was the case for Anthony Bourdain, who is said to have traveled to all 7 continents. But Japan stood out more than most of the other places he saw. The magazine Men's Journal says this is where he got a lot of ideas that could help him make better food. Anthony learned how much there was to learn there, and it made him want to see as much as he could. Japan may have been the thing that gave his career the boost it needed. Money significant issue. The truth about Anthony Bourdain's life is that he didn't become famous and rich right away. He may have been a well-known person when he died, but it didn't seem like people started to notice him until he was in his 40s. The biography says that it took him so long to become successful that he was afraid about his future when he turned 44. At this point, most people don't want to be in debt without health insurance and with little to no rent money. Sadly, that's where Bourdain is said to have been by the time he was in his mid-40s. Thank goodness things got better for the chef before he turned 50, which helped Anthony move on from his problems. Got on track. It's easy to tell when things started to go well for some famous people when you look back at their lives. That time for Anthony Bourdain was when he published his piece in 1999. This showed people what it's like to be a cook without any goals or direction, which gave them a look into Anthony Bourdain's life. The New Yorker decided to post the piece, which got a lot of attention from the cook. The idea came from George Orwell, according to reports. Kitchen Confidential, his first book, became a New York Times hit very quickly after he signed his book deal. He finally made a name for himself in the world with this. Anthony Bourdain used oysters. Anthony Bourdain loved food all his life. That wasn't always the case, though, because he loved the taste and the fun of cooking it. There were times when it was just for the thrill of making people respond. He told The Guardian in an interview that this was informed by a family trip to France. A story told by Bourdain says that his parents left him and his brother in the car outside of La Pyramide while they went inside to eat. He seems to have fought back by asking for clams and other foods they found disgusting. It's said that it made him try new things with his tastes, though not always for the best reasons. Spent life broke. It's hard to think that famous people don't have a lot of money. Anthony Bourdain did not become famous for many years. This is one of the most interesting facts about his life. Because of this, he didn't like money for a long time. It looks like he used to make only $120 for working 12 hours after taxes were taken out. Given that Bourdain wasn't making much money and was abusing drugs, he never seemed to have any money in the bank. Page 6 even said that the cook was always late on his paycheck because of this problem. It must have felt great for Anthony when he finally became famous. Gave a voice. There's no doubt that Anthony Bourdain's life changed a lot of people. Many people liked the chef's food, books, and films. But Anthony also had a lot of fans from underrepresented groups who thought he changed their lives for the better. After all, he often tried to give these kinds of people a voice. The food Bourdain tried around the world moved him so much that he wanted other people to know all about where the food came from. That meant giving people who had been making these dishes for years a look into the people who made them and bringing their attention to things that other people might miss. This kindness made the chef's fame soar. Food waste issue. Given how important food was to Anthony Bourdain, it may not come as a surprise that he didn't like it when people wasted it. If the cook could have helped it, he might have avoided speaking out, but he couldn't keep quiet about this. That was especially true after he learned the numbers behind it. It looks like a third of the food that's meant to be eaten by people is wasted, which is pretty scary. That seemed to go against everything Bourdain had learned from working in kitchens, so he couldn't stand it. He wanted to make the video wasted because he thought it would make people want to change their ways and waste less food. Beef with Guy Fier. People say that Anthony Bourdain was very shy and quiet. This is the truth about his life. That doesn't mean he didn't fight with other famous people, though. Some of these people were Wolfgang Puck, Paula Deen, Guy Fieri, and Rachel Ray, whom he's said to have called evil. It looks like Bourdain didn't just cook the beef in the kitchen. Even though he didn't agree with a lot of people, his attitude is said to have changed near the end of his life. He started to pay less attention to what other chefs were doing and more attention to where his own business was going. Someone said that made Anthony less rude, especially when he talked about Fieri. Gave up addiction. Most of the time, going cold turkey isn't a good idea when you have a problem with drug abuse like this, but sometimes it works, and Anthony Bourdain is a good example of that. He's said to have been able to beat his drugs before they killed his life for good. It was said that hating the person he saw in the mirror was enough to make that big change. However, it still took him years to clean up. He'd been slowly increasing the strength of the drugs he was using, so he couldn't just change things that quickly. Anthony did it in the end, though, which is something that many people try to do but never succeed at. McDonalds and Hakarl. One of the most surprising things about Anthony Bourdain's life might be that he liked fast food. That doesn't mean he thought all fast food was the same, though. People say he would never stop at McDonald's, even though he might have been happy to eat at KFC or Shake Shack. Anthony thought that the food on their menu was gross. He supposedly hated the food there so much that he would compare it to some of the worst things he'd eaten while traveling. One thing it wasn't said to be worse than was Hakarl, though. This Icelandic meal of pickled shark is very hard to get the hang of. Bourdain never could get it right in his whole life. Daughter, harshest critic. Anthony Bourdain had a lot going on, so it's not a big surprise that he didn't always have as much time for his family as he would have liked. Since Anthony is said to have moved more than 200 days a year, he valued the time he spent with his family and friends. There's no doubt about that with his daughter, Ariane. He said she was one of his biggest influences, but she wasn't afraid to say bad things about his food. It seemed that Ariane was his toughest reviewer. Bourdain told The Takeout that he had to deal with her very acute palate. If there was something in one of his foods that she didn't like, she pointed it out. Dealing with cancer. There are some things that people should never forget about Anthony Bourdain's life. One of them is his kind heart. He helped other people even though he was busy cooking, making films, writing books, and other things. Ali Alouche, a teenager with cancer, was having a hard time with his care, is one of them. Bourdain offered to help the boy reach his goal of eating a meal in every U.S. state. He gave him $4,000 to help him meet his GoFundMe goal of $50,000. And on Christmas Eve, he talked to the kid on a video call. Likely, Alouche didn't expect Anthony to reach out, so his kindness meant a lot. Daily JiuJitsu training. Anthony Bourdain's busy work routine might not have been good for his body. Did involve a lot of eating and moving around after all. One of the most interesting things about Anthony Bourdain's life was always his great health. It turns out that the cook loved Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is why, according to reports, the man did this as often as he could to stay in shape. He promised Nouveau that he would work out every day, no matter where he was or what he had planned. Some of this ended up on his TV shows, but Anthony didn't do this sport to be filmed. Mental health struggles. Even though Anthony Bourdain seemed to be living a high life, his life was very sad. That's because the cook had a lot of problems with his mental health. Bourdain had a lot of problems with depression, which was caused by his years of drug abuse. Even though he beat those habits, they still made a mark on him. He told The Guardian that he was an unhappy soul and told a psychologist that he felt isolated. Anthony told everyone on his travel and food show, Parts Unknown, that he felt isolated. Talking about his mental health on the show seemed like a good step forward, but did it make a difference? Anthony's first divorce. The chef's mental health was greatly affected by and would remain so for a long time after those years of dealing with drug abuse. That wasn't the only thing that made him depressed, though. Anthony Bourdain's already difficult life took a bad turn when he and his first wife, Nancy Putkowski, got a divorce. He was very sad after the split. They were said to have brought out the worst in each other through their love and codependency relationship. After they split up, he ran away to the Caribbean and tried to drown his sadness in other women. He's also said to have tried to kill himself, but luckily Anthony was able to stop him. Anthony's constant traveling. Anthony Bourdain married Nancy Putkowski first, but she wasn't the last woman. The cook got married to Octavia Busia, a mixed martial artist, a few years after the split. Busia could only handle Bourdain's busy schedule for so long. Since he was gone for hundreds of days a year, they grew apart on their own. When they went their different ways, there didn't seem to be any bad feelings between them. Anthony told People magazine that neither of them was mad or felt like a victim. They just didn't want to be together anymore. Given all of his travel, Bourdain may have felt some guilt about their split, but he was very dedicated to his job. Anthony falls for Asia Argento. While Anthony Bourdain was still alive, Octavia Busia wasn't the only woman who affected his sad life. He fell in love with Asia Argento in the few years between when they broke up and when he died. The spark between them seemed pretty clear to people who watched Parts Unknown, the film that put them together. The Daily Mail says that didn't make their relationship public until a year after they met on the show. Another thing was that their relationship wasn't the norm. One of the strangest things Asia said was that she and her boyfriend thought it wasn't a problem if they cheated on each other. But was she saying the truth? Affectionate with another man. It looked like Anthony Bourdain's already difficult life hit a particularly rough patch right before he died. Once Anthony had died, his fans wanted to know what happened to make him so bad and if someone was to blame. Soon, people began to blame Asia Argento. Pictures of Asia looking like she was getting close to another man were their proof. Some people thought that Argento's kissing someone other than Bourdain might have sent him down a path he couldn't get out of. But it looks like she thinks that people just needed someone to blame for his death and that she was an easy person to pick. Taking his life. Anthony Bourdain's sad life ended on June 8, 2018, just a few weeks before he would have been 62 years old. At the time, he was said to be in France working on an episode of Parts Unknown with Eric Rippert. It seems that Rippert was the one who found Bourdain unconscious in his hotel room. Bourdain may have been surprised that he lived so long. He seemed to think he was living on borrowed time because he told CNBC that he thought he should have died when he was 20. Anthony said that his life was like a stolen car and he was always checking the rearview mirror for flashing lights. Substance issues were to blame. A lot of people who started watching The Cook right before he died probably didn't know everything about his private life. Some of the people who had been there for him for a while may have known about his past drug problems, so when some people heard about his sad death, they thought he'd fallen back into old habits. Anthony's loss wasn't because he was using too many illegal drugs, though. People around the world learned that when a lab study showed he had no drugs in his blood when he had died. Some people found this hard to accept because it meant Anthony probably hadn't died by accident. He'd ended things on purpose. Overcome mental health struggles. Some fans may not have always been able to tell Anthony Bourdain's life was hard, and after all, people who hurt the most inside are usually the ones who hide their pain. The chef had been open about his mental health problems, but his behavior in public seemed to show that he'd gotten over them. That was not the case, unfortunately. Anthony talked about his problems in the past tense a lot. They were still very much a part of his life. Many people couldn't help him because he kept his problems to himself. It was even more sad when I learned later how badly Anthony was hurt. Daughter can't inherit. Anthony Bourdain didn't seem to have any money for a lot of his life. Things went from bad to better when he finally became known around the turn of the decades. Celeb Net Worth said in 2018 that he was worth $16 million, which is a huge difference from the past. That number may not be completely correct, but there's no doubt that he had something to leave behind. He gave his daughter most of that, but she can't do anything with it yet. It's said that she won't get any of her fortune until she turns 18, which is still a while away. If you've watched the video till here, that means you've enjoyed the video. Subscribe. Don't forget to turn on the notifications bell icon